I have a separate kind of topic. I don't know if I can throw that out now, Scott, Simon.
Sure. Yeah, we're just waiting for people to trickle in from the previous.
Okay, something for people to consider. I've actually been teaching face-to-face at another school while I was teaching online at my two universities. It's a little nursing school that just simply had no capacity for doing anything online synchronously or asynchronously. So everything was face-to-face. And what I discovered was that even though the students and the teachers are very, very guarded and strict even with themselves about their masks and not touching each other within the first couple of weeks, eventually all of that started to fall apart. It's just the nature of human beings to start losing track of what is in front of them once they start getting used to it. So we went from very, very carefully not making sure we didn't touch each other in the hallways to the teachers holding students by the shoulders to assure them that everything would be fine. We went from fist bumping to actually, wrestling in the hallways as the boys would do. And it basically just started, the masks never changed, thank God, because that's the most important thing. But in terms of social distancing, be prepared in the classroom for an eventual breakdown, not only by the students, but by the faculty themselves in terms of how rigidly they see the social distancing rules. Is my 2 cents.
Well said. So what do you think, Simon? Shall we?
Yeah, why don't you? Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'll just share the slides here. Can everybody see them? There you go. So it's pretty informal today, but I just wanted to start off with going over. If you click on the link in the chat or in the Facebook, you can actually access this slide. But this is the government guideline. So if anybody wants to refer to what the government actually recommends as far as how to deal with COVID in the classroom, the recommendations, this is the document you can go to. And if you're having some issues with your administration and you feel like they're not really following the guidelines, then this might be a good resource.
Simon, Scott, sorry, I was just about to record because nobody remembered to, but I'm not allowed to. So
it's recording.
Oh, it's recording? Oh, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I didn't see that. Okay, thanks, guys. Sorry.
No worries. So the first thing that they do here is they provide some guidelines of what they think it will look like in a 20-person class. So this is their idea of how a 20-person class should be. And they kind of are mandating 2-meter distances, but they're not accounting for person distance. According to the guidelines, that's fine, and that's kind of the optimal thing. Many of us have many more students, so I'm not sure how realistic this is for a lot of us. It might look a little more like this, which is their guideline for a class with 40 people. And they still are saying you can maintain a 1-meter distance, but this classroom is fairly large in the example. So, yeah, this is, again, one of those best case scenario things. This is what we should be aiming for, but not necessarily what we all have access to. This was the other thing in the guideline that I thought was worth sharing is for somebody who's Japanese, maybe a little better than mine, basically with masks on, 5 minutes of conversation is equal to 1 cough, I think is about how you would translate that.
Yeah.
And that's a bit of concern too. So we need to think when we have conversation activities, maybe shorter is better, and maybe combining them with as much distancing as we can.
Or speaking to your elbow like this.
Yeah, true enough.
Although, Scott, if I may, I don't know what that number refers to. 5 minutes of speaking without a mask is equivalent to 1 cough without a mask.
Sorry, it's I couldn't really copy from the guideline. It's one of those nasty PDFs, but I think they were saying 5 minutes with a mask is equivalent to 1 minute, so 1 cough without a mask.
Without a mask.
Yeah, because these are in the example. I think it's not in 95 minutes.
Got it.
Standard fare masks. Yeah, and the other thing is for people who are in the Tokyo area, they seem to really stand by the 2-meter rule. So anybody who's in more of an epidemic area, I guess that would be Tokyo and Osaka, and forgive me if I'm missing anyone else, but they really seem to be enforcing the 2-meter rule. The other main thing I think was, that was about it when it came to the main suggestions from the government guidelines. I was wondering how many of you think it's realistic that you can follow those guidelines? Are these at all possible in your classroom? Or if not, other ways around it?
That's what we're doing at the moment, but much smaller classrooms and smaller number of students.
Okay, so
Maximum 7 people in one room, really. So it's very different numbers.
does anybody else have any direct experience with face-to-face currently, or is everybody here just preparing for the inevitability?
Well, in my school, they haven't done any face-to-face, but they've marked off all the desks in all the classrooms because they've allowed the students to go in there to use the stronger Wi-Fi. So they've tried separating them by 2 meters, but I clearly showed, I tape measured it and took pictures of it, and over half of them are meter and a half, and they didn't change anything. I hate to see what happens if we do go to face-to-face, but technically we're not going to.
That is unfortunate. Yeah. The other guideline in there that they mention is they've changed their mask guidelines now. So because of the issues with heat stroke, they haven't said you have to wear a mask all the time. They've kind of slightly changed the guideline. I think I included that. Let me share again.
I'm joining this conversation late, so I'm not sure if I'm replying to the comments that you made. But at my school, we've been face-to-face since mid-June, and we're all required to wear masks, but most of the faculty wear it just to here. They don't cover their nose, and especially our department chair. And he sets the tone for everyone, and he's so, well, I won't say. Thank you. I just realized that. The students wear the mask just to hear. I would guess it's 50-50 proper hygiene and
I
care.
think the most important thing to remember when you're wearing a mask is that if you're going to sneeze, make sure you take your mask off.
Yes, that's what everyone
as far
does.
as you can.
Well,
and
who
then
wants
put
to
your mask back
sneeze in
on.
their mask
Mm.
and
Well,
then wear it? You know,
it's worth backing up what you're saying, Linda. It's worth saying that the data seems to support that wearing a mask and not covering your nose is pointless.
yes.
So I don't know as a teacher what kind of policy you want to enforce in your classroom, but that's one of the possibilities. Do we want to have a mandatory mask policy and that not allowing those students to participate if they're not wearing a mask?
I don't know. It's very distressing to me. I had to do a campus event in early August, and it was very hot. And with the person introducing me, I was supposed to be a speaker. The person introducing me was, not wearing his mask properly, and standing right there. And all I could think of was, what image is this giving to the audience? And I couldn't think on my topic that I was supposed to be speaking on because I was so distressed about the way the mask was being worn.
Glenn?
I was just curious if anybody's heard anything about what their science labs are going to be doing. Ours was going to consider having them as an exception and then allow them to have their lab courses take place. But as far as that goes, I mean, they've got to be closer than a meter when they're working together. I don't know. Has anybody ever heard anything?
I've heard exceptions being made for courses that require an in-person component, like nursing, as well as some education courses. And for instance, one of my universities, Meiji Gakuin, most things are distance, but there are some things that have to be in person, otherwise those students will not pass this year. So I guess it depends on the university, what level of severity they want to set, but it seems that some face-to-face will be necessary if these students, otherwise the students will have to take another semester. There's no way around it.
Yeah, Waseda has announced that everyone is staying online except for science students who need to do research. Anyone who needs to use labs, they're allowed to go in. Or I don't know if all the classes are going to be taught. That I don't know that far, but that's what they've decided.
On the subject of masks, has anybody had any experience with face shields? So one of the schools, the one school where I'm going to be in person in the fall semester, they're requiring masks, but they're saying if you've got some kind of a speaking class where you need to see the mouth, they're issuing face shields to the students, and I think to teachers as well. And I think the idea is when you're doing the speaking, you wear a face shield, all other times you're supposed to wear a mask. Does anybody have any experience with that? Or
The recent
Not
data
personally,
on that,
but sorry,
Yeah,
go on,
go ahead,
Scott.
Simon.
No, after you.
the recent data shows that face shields are nowhere near as effective as masks, and that a face shield should be worn in combination with a mask, not instead of a mask.
right.
So personally, I wouldn't be comfortable with that. I don't know if anybody else has a different feeling on it.
I know people that have used them, and they obviously prefer them because you don't have to wear a mask and you're not all stuffed up. But yeah, I read the same about the effectiveness.
Yeah, there's a study in Switzerland that showed that the face shields are completely ineffective, and that
Yeah, I heard
masks
that,
are more
yeah.
effective. One of the problems with the face shields, that it's just like your sunglasses. It's like when you wear a mask and have sunglasses, they cloud up, and reading glasses are the same. One solution I found, which is a caterer's mask. It's a little like you see people wearing when they're making your Mexican food in California. Yeah, they're like plastic masks that just sit around your face and kind of go in that direction. I bought a couple of those. They're 500 yen each. I think that's a pretty good solution. It's called
Those masks that don't
mask.
seal, though, however, are not considered effective for stopping the virus. It's not forming some sort of seal around it.
But you can wear the caterer's mask with a regular
Shout out
mask.
to Jenny for modeling the 4 different ways to wear a mask.
I'm done.
There are ways to prevent the fogging of your glasses using a regular surgical mask. And it doesn't just involve like praying that it sticks to your face.
I believe
Bill had his hand up, I think.
Yeah, well, I think even if we're wearing masks, if we're in the same room with people for 90 minutes, if the ventilation is not great, then that's a dose, right? That's a 100% dose. That's like being sneezed on in the face by somebody, right? And people who have worked in offices this is spread just because of the amount of time they spend together.
So this was something I put together. This is not official, just based off what I read off the recent guidelines and some of the studies, a suggested list of maybe mandatory requirements. So maybe not all of these would be possible, but I think trying to hit all of these that we can in our classrooms might be a good start. And I put for number 1, make mask mandatory, no mask alternatives, as in no neck coverings or anything else of that nature. And as well as if we can have some alcohol gel or spray in the classroom, that'd be a great way to start class. Everybody grabs their name tag and grabs a squirt of alcohol spray. Is there anything else anybody would like to add to this list that they think I'm missing?
Cynthia has a hand up there.
My school, we haven't gone face to face yet, but what was proposed back in April, and I think what we'll be following is that the class times will actually be shortened to avoid congestion in the corridors when the students are changing classes. Also to avoid lines for the restrooms, which tend to form. And it's a Josh Tandai, so the men's rooms, most of them will be changed over to all ladies' rooms, and there are a few men's rooms that will be set aside. But they're increasing the number of restrooms, and the classes will be shortened, which I think is probably a pretty good idea. What else?
As an amusing aside on toilets, I'm not sure many people know, but the first ever female standing urinal was put in place for the original Tokyo Olympics. it wasn't very popular, funnily enough.
Cynthia, my AKIWA, we shortened our 50-minute classes to 45 to allow for no crossover between classes.
Yeah.
Extra 5 minutes helps.
Okay, in order, Steve.
Yes, my other question was, I've seen on TV some study with restaurants where if you don't have good window ventilation, you put 2 fans in the doorway, like a circulator fan going one way and like an eye level fan the other way. I don't know if anybody has any ideas, like would that be a good
We're
in
doing
addition to
that
open windows?
in our schools. I mean, again, they're much smaller, but yeah, while we do have the windows open, but we are circulating the air through them with fans placed at basically at every doorway as well.
I was just
Kind
going
of a
to
racket.
suggest that I thought that fans would be an excellent way, one blowing out the window to carry the air out.
It makes sure that if somebody does sneeze, it carries it to everybody in the room as well. So it has that added
Yes,
advantage of
exactly.
helping to spread the virus. If you're not
Yeah.
masked, I mean, yeah. So I don't mean to be too cynical, but so Glenn, I think, had raised his hand just before Louise, who I will get to very soon.
Yeah, just a very short thing. I mean, Scott's list includes some kind of hand sanitizer, but early on, before our school decided to go online, they were going to do all this in the classroom. And one of their regulations was that somebody from the administration would be wiping down the tables and the designated teacher computer and the door handles in between every class. And I don't know why we went to online. I'm wondering if some of that was because they didn't want to do that. But on Scott's list, perhaps you want to put down something about cleaning the room despite all the other
that's
things.
a good point. We're doing that as well. We're wiping every surface between lessons. It is a lot of work, even in small classrooms.
Yes, it is.
We're also taking temperatures of everybody coming in.
But that's not going to be necessarily accurate. You know, recently.
Well, no, it's not going to be
things.
accurate. And we talked about this a little this morning, and a lot of it, it's not a complete performance, but it's to be seen to be doing something as well. With the usual proviso, though, you know, that schools should be telling students not to come to school if they have a temperature themselves, to head to or a cold. But I don't know if they are. Louise, I think you were next.
Yes, it's not my university that I particularly wanted to talk about this evening. It's my son's school. I'm a little concerned. They seem to have tried a lot of things. They have split classes of 40 into 2 separate classes of 20, put them in had extra classrooms for them. I just had my son come in and look at the plan that Scott had put up, and he pointed out the one that's his plan. And they have all the windows open, they have good ventilation. Basketball, which is what my son does, they don't have any one-on-one, no tackling. You say tackling in basketball, do you? Whatever. Anyway, that's all great, but I absolutely can't understand. All the kids come from a long way away, and the school is up in the mountains, and the only way to get up there is to take a bus from the train station up the mountain to the school. And the school puts on buses every few minutes, but the buses are absolutely packed. Like the kids are pushed on, squashed together. And so they said, oh no, we're going to put on extra buses. And I asked my son, so seriously, how many kids are there on one bus now? And he said, well, instead of there being about 60, there are now only about 40. All squashed together standing on this bus. And I said, and you all keep your mask on? Oh yeah, and you don't talk? He said, are you kidding? We're 16-year-old kids, we talk, we chat the whole way. I said, are the bus windows open? He said, oh, not quite sure. So it's like the school tried to make the classes safe, but forgot completely about, well, he also has to take the Tokaido line to get there, which of course is the most crowded line. And they've partly got there, but they've missed a huge portion of it, and I'm not really quite sure what else they could have done. However, that said, they've been back since the 1st of June and there've been no reported cases yet.
Have you contacted the PTA about your concerns? Like, is there any movement with the parents about?
The parents don't like it, but apparently they're claiming they've put on all these extra buses and the situation is so much better. It's like it's this classic thing, and I've even telephoned and talked to them, and they say that it's fine. You know what I mean? Even though it's not, they don't admit that it's not. It's really a difficult situation. So it's I don't know what else I can do. I could keep my son home from school, but no, I can't stand. He was home for 3 months. That's enough.
Yeah. Jose?
Just thinking about what Louise said is a little bit different from what I wanted to say, but I think maybe the next time you talk to one of the administrators, just put him on your phone with a video and say, could you please say that into my video? Because if we get a cluster, if we get an infection at this school because of that bus, I want you on video saying that everything is fine. That's just me venting. So suggestion, and this is something that I was carrying around while I was going to the nursing school that I was just talking about. I know that there's hand sanitizer, and because this is a nursing school, they were actually pretty good about hand sanitizer being everywhere, but sometimes hand sanitizer just isn't where you need it. I carry a little vial of hand sanitizer with me just in case I think, okay, I just touched that kid and I got a second and I can just do my hands right here because it's not necessarily in the classroom. So for anyone who has a little bottle that you can carry around, it's colored because it's the sanitizer that I use is like, I think they're trying to make it look like iodine, but bring some around with you just in case it isn't at the door or sometimes it runs out. And these kids are all pumping that pump and sometimes it can run out during the middle of the day. Carry some around with you is a suggestion. Jenny?
Good point.
As someone at a public school, I would just love it if we had soap.
That's hilarious. My university, there are no soap dispensers.
That's a good point. Yeah,
soap's more effective than alcohol sanitizers as well, apparently.
I mean, we don't have the alcohol sanitizers either, but
right.
You know. Plus, we're still, for those of you who are familiar with high schools in Japan, we are still doing sports day, and I can tell you that the entire school is maskless while we are outside. Jose has probably seen a picture of this. I've sent some. So.
Cynthia?
I talked about this earlier today in another session, but I'm thinking if the students do not follow the protocols, in the classroom, and I'm sure that things will loosen up quite a bit as we get used to being back in school. But my feeling is I am high risk because of age and just I have lots of allergies and respiratory stuff regularly. So if the students are not willing to keep me safe, I feel my only choice is to walk out of the room and say, we have to work something out. But until you decide that you're going to follow the protocols, I will be in my office. I don't want to punish students, but you know, if I think it's respect, and it comes down to a question of respect, and we have to, of course we're going to slip up, but I think you know, I'm in my mind and in my heart, I'm brewing for you know, confrontations, and I hope we don't have to have it, but I feel like I'm not going to ask students to leave the room, but I will, and leave it up to them to discuss it and to work something out so that we can have a workable situation. I want to know what other people think about this.
Well, I think that's a good segue to something I wanted to talk about as the next subject, which is how can we modify existing lesson plans and styles to make ourselves safer in the classroom, right? And my own context is university teaching, and I know there's people here from private school or high school or junior high. So I just came with 2 ideas, and maybe we can share some of our own about how to modify.
Just before you do, Scott, David, did you have a point to follow up there on Cynthia?
Me?
David,
Oh.
just raised his hand. Did you have something to follow up on, Cynthia, there, David?
I teach at university, and our university had decided to go online again for the fall. But I spoke to our union rep, and I said, because I'm a member of OTJ, in the first semester, it seemed that some schools kind of went back and forth. If our school decides to go back and forth, what rights do we have as workers? He said, none. You go back to work or you lose your pay. It's pretty much, that's how he put it to us. But we can, as a union, collectively try to, negotiate. But basically, if you don't work, you don't get paid. That's the labor law.
Right. Bill.
Yes. Following directly on that, what if a teacher is perfectly willing to work, but just not from the same room as the students? Like, set up their computer and here it is, and I'm gonna go over there and
my
see me on the computer.
interpretation of labor standards law would be that if you willingly don't follow the terms of your contract, you would be in breach of it. Of course, if it went to arbitration, I'm sure acting in the best interests of everybody's health and being reasonable would be taken into account. But strictly speaking, you have to uphold the terms of your agreement. And by not doing so, you willfully break it.
To what Simon said, I just pasted something in the chat, and that was from the MEX guidelines. That's kind of how they worded it, and that translation is not official, so please don't take the English as the faithful, translation. But basically, the MEX does stress that they need to offer alternatives.
Right.
They don't make that any mandatory, right? It's wishy-washy language, but that could be valuable if you find yourself in that position using the next language.
I mean, I think it's worth remembering that the national lockdown was an advisory soft lockdown. It wasn't a mandatory. They legally couldn't mandate a lockdown, but it was adhered to because it was a strong request. So I think showing these guidelines to the schools should have some weight. Cynthia again.
Yeah. A colleague of mine is talking about, shortening the actual face-to-face time by using Zoom for, on-demand materials to give students access to things, links to things, and time to do perhaps library work or whatever we ask them to do without the teacher actually being present or requiring the students to be physically in the classroom. As long as we give them 90 minutes of something, once a week or twice a week, as the case may be, that seems like it might be a good compromise. I think limiting the actual physical contact, is time-wise I think probably makes a lot of sense.
Jose.
And I'm worried about winter, of course, and the snow and everything else. And perhaps shortening the class would also, kind of take care of that issue to a degree as well, is shortening the physical time in the classroom.
Winter is coming. Jose.
So to follow up on that, what I've been having to consider, because I've started to hear rumors of what one of my universities is considering what they will do in October. One of my universities said, no, we're going to stay online. Just let's keep doing what we're doing. But another one is considering a ridiculous concept of doing hybrid classes, but not hybrid synchronous classes. You will have, that we are told, according to these ideas that they're having, you will have to teach both the students who want to come to the classroom. So they will come to the classroom, you will teach them, it's their choice. But for the students who do not want to come to the classroom, you must prepare completely on-demand or asynchronous curriculum for them. You may not be allowed to penalize any student for choosing either one because they choose one way and at the beginning of the semester and they stay in that mode, and you as a teacher are responsible for making the curriculum for both, grading both, and holding no prejudice in either way. And I was thinking, how the hell am I going to do that? And I figured basically I'll take the stuff that I'll make for the on-demand asynchronous assignments, the reading assignments, the writing assignments that I'm going to have to make for them. And I will also assign them to the kids who come to the classes, which will then allow me to keep those classes very short. I'll keep them short, maybe throw something in there that's a little bit more communication based, but let them have some communication options so that they don't say that, oh no, he just made us do the same thing as on demand. And let them have that to basically base it on the on-demand material so that then, as Scott's slide showed us, keep those classes shorter, but give them some kind of communication and kind of reduce the workload on me or the other teachers who now are being asked to do twice as much work. You know, we basically have to write up 2 classes and watch over 2 sets of classes. And I feel for Cynthia. I mean, I've told her this before in other sessions that I had pneumonia 14 years ago. I'm 58 myself, and I'm kind of in a high-risk group. No, I don't want to be around those kids any more than I have to. Well, that's what I'm thinking.
Tricky times, that's for sure.
Yes.
Which doesn't help anybody at all.
I've depressed everyone into us.
Yeah.
It would be nice if they doubled your salary, wouldn't it?
I really don't mind if that would happen. Yeah.
Maybe this is a good time to start talking about, like what Jose was saying. What could we do?
Yeah.
How, if we have to go face to face and we don't have an option, and some of us may choose not to attend, but for many of us that's not a realistic issue or possibility. What can we do? And I kind of thought about 2 possible ways of, you know, modifying regular lesson plans. And the first, I think somebody else brought it up in OTJ, and forgive me if I can't remember who this was attributed to, but the idea is kind of like a flipped classroom approach, where you all come together for the first 20 or 30 minutes for whatever direct instruction or presentation you have. Then you explain to them what the grammar goals or the language goals or what the focus for that week is. And then you kind of send them off. And whether it's a group assignment that they have to complete over Zoom with somebody else, or whether it's a reading and writing assignment they need to complete on their own time, that's fine. But you kind of take the flipped classroom approach where they're doing a lot of the work at home and bringing that and presenting that or reviewing it in class. And you're spending much less time together, and the interaction is not happening in the classroom, it's happening outside of the classroom. So
that's assuming that anybody does homework, which my students don't.
That's definitely a separate issue, but yeah, no, I see what you're saying. It would depend on knowing your students and how well.
And engaging them with lots of fun project work to do, so that they don't feel like it's homework, they just feel it's fun stuff.
And
recording a lot of videos. I think this is where things like, what's the Microsoft product? It's slipped my mind. Flipgrid come in and stuff like that.
Linda, you can also, like Simon said, approach it from the positive, you know, the carrot side of the idea, but there's also the stick, or like at least the, you know, the understanding stick. Listen, I know what you guys have been like. You're second year students, and I know what you were like last year, and you don't do homework. Get this straight. This is not the real normal world that you're used to. You're going to have to do homework for this class.
Actually, they've done better this year than ever before. I've made homework 20% of their final grade.
There you go. And that, I think that'll handle the situation.
Yeah, make following teachers' instructions to the letter 90% of the final grade, and see what happens. Cynthia again.
I had a very interesting chat with our gokcho a few weeks ago, one-on-one, and there's a lot of personal stuff there that I don't want to get into, but
go on.
Kim, I'm approaching retirement. It's a question of when, but we'll put that aside. But I said, what about the face-to-face situation? We have, you know, it's a Tondai, 2 years. The second year students are already in town. They're in Sapporo. They have their rooms. They're set up. They've been living here. They've stayed. The freshmen are not here. They are scattered all over Hokkaido. About half of them maybe are, you know, on the other side of the island or wherever else. Economically, things are really, really bad. And for the students to have to come into town for one term, rent a room, set up everything is a huge, huge expense for parents. And I'm imagining that we're going to have to go into a situation that Jose was explaining, to have on-demand materials ready for the students who cannot manage to come into Sapporo. If we're going, face-to-face, I think we're going to end up in some kind of a mixed situation where students who are really having a hard time financially, who can't physically come to Sapporo because of that, all the increased economic stress on them. I think the reality is that we're going to have some of those students who we're going to have to provide for.
Mm.
There's another possibility for that. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Point, but obviously, as the teacher in the classroom, most people probably don't have the authority to make that decision or put those policies in place, do they?
No, we have no choice. None.
One approach that could work with what Cynthia was saying is kind of keep doing the same, but in a face-to-face standard. Get them to bring their electronic devices and their computers to the classroom and do the sort of lessons you were doing before. And that way you can include the students that couldn't be there in person, right? Essentially, that's a way of, eating your cake at the same time as having it. But I don't know, it's kind of, you're not really using the face-to-face time to your benefit that way. But that's definitely a safer way of doing things. Mind you, everyone would have to be wearing headphones, but it's a possibility. What does everyone think?
Would everyone have to be wearing headphones, or could they just
absolutely have to? Yeah.
Could they just mute their cameras? They would have to wear headphones.
They could mute their cameras. Okay, their cameras
turn off their
problem.
cameras, and in the room, turn off their cameras and mute their speakers.
If they mute their speakers, they can't hear anything.
Then the other people wouldn't hear it, what students in the classroom were saying. I see.
The other problem is that even if they mute their speakers, their microphones are still working. And the real problem is when a person who is 2 meters away from you, if you're
it goes really wonky.
Well, wonky, yeah, that's a good word. It becomes like
you get feedback,
even if the speakers are off. So they all have to be wearing headphones and not speaking very loudly. So you actually, one positive effect of that is you end up with social distancing because they have to be far away from each other. So
that might work
as a form of social distancing, yeah, but then you end up with a room that might not be big enough for everyone. Also, my original point that I want to say now that I'm actually speaking is you're assuming that unlike my university, there is Wi-Fi in all of the rooms. My university, the city university for this entire city, has Wi-Fi on only one floor and down in the basement, and all of the rooms, there is no Wi-Fi. They do, however, have these lovely chip readers for attendance, which probably cost about $1,000 each.
My school has Wi-Fi in most of the classrooms, but not enough if everybody's using it. So when we tried to have faculty meetings online, just the faculty, that didn't work.
So those are just two possible alternatives. Is anybody else thinking of another way they can adapt their teaching style?
I have a question. Everyone has a phone, and if we have assign students pair work, can they call each other? Can they actually use the phone function? And
Jose was speaking to the issues with that. The one issue is that they may not have Wi-Fi or data. The other issue is they need to have headphones because the interference with them talking and the speaker, it would be kind of untenable in anything but a very large classroom.
But Cynthia's asking about regular telephone calls.
Telephoning.
I know how to do, but those cost money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the other thing.
And
also,
the fidelity is much lower.
I found out too that even something like Quizlet, if you're not on Wi-Fi, chews up your data really fast.
Mm-hmm.
So be careful of that. If you're thinking, oh, it's only text-based. Quizlet is not text-based. And it will eat up your data really fast. So be careful about what you think you can get away with, even if you don't have Wi-Fi in the room. You're now asking these kids to spend their money to support your curriculum.
Right.
Oh.
One thing I did in my classes, way back when I installed like a quiz system on well, I wanted to do it so students could connect through the Wi-Fi, and I could even provide Wi-Fi to the students. But I found out that the classroom didn't even have internet, so the LAN cable on the floor was just sort of a decoration. So, I mean, it's a real technical solution, but you can actually run a server off of your laptop and run Wi-Fi and have up to 50 students connect to your computer. If you're running something that's, you know, you can run off a laptop, you could do that.
Perhaps you should do a workshop on that, Bill.
Well, I used to, but that was like 15 years ago. Now
Right.
everyone's got Wi-Fi.
So
Right.
you're suggesting if we have
No.
access to a wired connection but not a wireless, we could just create our own network?
No, just like run Moodle off of your own computer, get
Oh,
like
local network. Gotcha.
WAMP or MAMP installed, so it's like an Apache server, and students just connect to your computer. You run a Wi-Fi out of it, get your.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
If you know
So
how
I've
to
been
run
doing
a
that
map server.
at my school. I have a class set of iPods, and they're not connected to the internet. They're connected to my laptop.
Mm,
That's good.
you geek you.
Bill, do you pay for that, or are you connected to the school internet?
Well, now we all have Wi-Fi, and I've started to move away from using that and starting to use newer commercial things that students can access by Wi-Fi on their own devices.
Mm-hmm.
But no, besides, buying a laptop and buying a Wi-Fi router and knowing how to set up a server on a Mac laptop or Windows laptop.
Not easy, right? For a novice. Dave.
It's kind of just listening to everybody speak. I'm working in Tokyo at a university that every classroom has Wi-Fi. We've been using Moodle for the last 10 years. We've been using G Suite for the last 10 years. And it's amazing. People are, on OTJ, people were worried about the differences between students. Some students have iPads, some don't. Some have Wi-Fi plans, some don't. But to hear about your different schools, it's even more astonishing that some schools don't even have Wi-Fi in the classrooms prior to COVID. This just blows me away. In the third richest country on planet Earth that's ever.
My school has only had Wi-Fi for the last couple of years in the classroom, and they still don't give part-time teachers access.
We could possibly encourage students that this is an opportunity to learn how to send each other faxes. I'm sure you all have faxes.
Well, yeah, schools always have faxes. Dave, were you at the session just before this with Brad Patterson, his high school students?
No.
Because he was giving some just shocking statistics as to how low Japan's ICT literacy is among its high schoolers, junior high schoolers, and its university. And I can't repeat them, but they just like made my jaw drop. I mean, I already knew it was bad, but it's horrible.
He was saying that literacy is decreasing in Japan, was increasing in other countries. Digital literacy.
And I have kids asking me in my classroom, first year university kids, when I say, okay, well, just put the URL into your phone. They will literally ask me, Mr. Cruz, what is a URL?
Yep.
Oh, they certainly come out of high school unprepared, that's for sure.
That's because we don't have any tech in high school.
There you go.
I was saying this earlier on today.
We
took this as an opportunity when we were locked down. We run private language schools. When we were locked down, we took this as an opportunity to encourage kids to develop ICT skills as well on devices of all kinds, because device and platform literacy is something that kids really need to develop. A lot of them will be, handy online and the couple of things that they use on their own smartphone. But who knows how to type?
That I'm raising my hand, but Nate,
I'll put it down again for you there, Dave.
Nate referenced that, I think, in the interview where, how did he say it? God, troubleshooting, teaching students how to troubleshoot, not necessarily how to use one platform, but how to, so they, when they get into the work world, they may have to navigate different platforms in their work world. So they really need to learn how to troubleshoot and how to, so Simon, what you were doing, the basic literacy at a young age is a great place to start, right?
So it's a good point you bring up. I was joking, but going into the work world, a lot of them actually will need to learn how to send faxes. So you'd probably be teaching them that too.
Yeah.
And I think ICT skills are essential, you know, and obviously I've attended a couple of presentations by junior high and high school teachers at private high schools in Tokyo, where all of the students have their own iPad, and they've been doing loads of great stuff during lockdown. Not everybody's in that position, far from it. And this is something we can take over in the conversation tomorrow. I think that the state schools, unfortunately, in Japan are leaving kids behind as far as ICT is concerned. Jenny, do you want to jump in here?
I'm just agreeing. I mean, people are like, oh, it's shocking that you don't have Wi-Fi. And I'm like, what? Most schools don't have Wi-Fi that are public schools.
Right.
They don't even have access to Google.
Yeah, there are moves to change this with the Giga project. I don't know how many people are aware of or have looked at the Giga project, but it's essentially one device per student aim that METI has out. Whether, as and when it will be achieved, I'm not really sure, but there's lots of documents on it. I can dig out those as references.
I was curious too, kind of changing the topic a bit to going what Cynthia was talking about. What do we plan to do if our students refuse to follow guidelines? Like for us that are university teachers, I don't really have an issue kicking a student out of the classroom, but maybe it's more difficult for those in high school or junior high. I think there's laws against it actually.
Right.
Do we have a plan if our student refuses to wear a mask or refuses to wear the mask properly or doesn't practice social distancing?
You obviously need support from your institution to be able to do that, right? And I don't know what people's relationships are like. Bill?
I think that's a good question to bring up with your student affairs office and just ask them, because I know at my school everything is, you know, they're taking a lot of precautions, and they're making signs about social distancing. They asked me to proofread the English version of it. So I think asking the student affairs division first gives you a backup, so you know that if they say, well, there's nothing we can do about it, then that's one story. But if they say, well, please tell the students that we have school rules, then you know that the student affairs division will have your back, and you can just tell them this student is causing some trouble, you know. But I mean, there might be some special cases though where students have some sort of an issue, like a legitimate issue with masks, and they'll get a medical what do you call it, dispensation or excuse? Yeah,
that is an issue, because I think I mentioned at the beginning that Tokyo has changed the guidelines. So they don't recommend wearing masks all the time due to issues with heat stroke. So they say that you do not necessarily have to be wearing the mask indoors while you're not talking and socially distanced.
Right.
So it really depends on what set of guidelines the school is going to follow, and how comfortable you are with that student in the classroom participating.
Catherine?
You're muted.
I was just going to say, so I work at a junior high school and 3 universities, and at the high school, in April, May, people are very good about wearing their masks, but this sort of June, July rolled around, and I will add, at the time, Iwate was at 0 cases, but I was still wanting students to wear a mask, and so then I just started to carry them with me. If they didn't have one, they forgot. It's like, oh, here you go. Here's your mask. And I just said the rule from my classroom is that you need to wear a mask. And then I explained to everyone that you may feel fine, but you don't know everyone's situation. And my daughter is a student at this school, and so I didn't ever bring her up, but she does have an autoimmune disease, and so she would be high risk, and so I would want to be taking special precautions. But I kind of used the Bachan example. I said someone may be living with their Bachan could be high risk. You know, this is our responsibility to be keeping everybody safe. So I didn't have anybody actually refuse to put the mask on when I gave it to them.
Right.
I will say, but.
Catherine, sorry, no, that was Catherine. Cynthia, sorry, I can't read.
Been reading and listening to, you know, the back to school face-to-face in the United States, and some classrooms, teachers are planning break times where the students can take the masks off. And I don't know how that would happen, but especially maybe later when it's colder, windows open, masks off for a 5-10 minute break. I mean, you know, something, because you know, in the last few weeks, I had to teach 2 model classes for high school students who are coming for an open campus session. And I had a mask made of synthetic fiber, but synthetic fiber that's supposed to be breathable. And in the short 50, I guess it was maybe 25, 30-minute sessions, I found the masks to be very, very uncomfortable. And, you know, I now can empathize with the students and having to wear the masks for a long time. But in speaking, it was particularly uncomfortable. But anyway, maybe scheduling a break time, giving people an out, if you need to take a break, you know, go out of the classroom or whatever. But I think maybe we need to think about something like this to give people a chance to just chill, because they're going to be in masks all day. And it's going to be really hard on them and the team, you know. So maybe we can come up with some kind of a break time plan or some kind of protocol where it's okay to take the mask off if, you know, the windows are open and
they don't talk and don't sing during that break time.
You know,
I think David has his hand up.
Yeah, I'm just curious. Would you all prefer to be teaching online for the fall semester? And this came up a little bit this morning with Simon. Like, how long do you think before as we enter into the fall, how long do you think it will take for universities or schools to say, after a cluster breakout or after somebody gets COVID in their school, how long do you think it'll take before they say, we're back online, kids?
Usually
I'd say less than a
3
week.
weeks or so.
Have they already collected the student fees?
Yeah.
University has.
Well, they're also
online.
worried about not just, you know, this semester student fees. I mean, yeah, they have that. They're cool. What they're worried about is the degree of dissatisfaction that's being expressed in social media, in normal media, being expressed by their daughters and their sons in their own homes. These administrators are wondering what's going to happen to us next year if we don't start doing something to make these kids happy. And they're not thinking about how to best provide an educational experience. They just want to make sure these kids' butts stay in their university seats. And to that end, they will do just about anything.
Glenn?
Well, at my uni, like I said before, they provided open classrooms with social distancing markers on there, but there were a lot of students that chose not to use them, and they were probably doing that not just because they wanted to lounge around in their pajamas in their own apartments, but I know a lot of them did express the fear of running into somebody in the classroom who might have it or whatever. But I'm sorry, I stepped out for a little moment here. Has anyone yet talked about contacting the union and finding out what they can do for us?
Yep, it's in the chat.
Okay, thanks.
And then there was also the suggestion of speaking to student affairs first as well.
Glenn, 734 in the chat.
Thank you. Sorry, I had a good dinner waiting.
Yeah, what did you have? I love the way that that union message was signed off there, in solidarity.
And we always do that.
Someone had their hand up. Why don't you just go ahead, whoever it was?
I just posted a link to an article that says 10% of Japanese university students are considering not going back for the fall.
Mm.
That was posted in OTJ by somebody else, but it's in Japanese, so good luck with that.
My comment to that article was, is that an abnormal number, without knowing how many say
Right.
that under regular times? I see my students, I teach a public school and it's a tech school. They're happier with how things are currently. So I think it really depends.
Yeah.
It really depends.
Yeah. That was the same thing that went through my mind, Scott. It's like, in a normal year, how many people drop out in the fall?
Right.
We definitely don't have a 10% dropout rate. Less than 1.
It says they're considering dropping out, but you know, I didn't read the article again. Just stick it there.
Well, I think David mentioned, how far into the term are we going to be able to get before COVID starts to spread into some of the universities, and we end up having to go back to online. Online students, we cannot control their private lives. And this is a big issue that is happening in the States. I mean, the universities are putting out all these policies and cautions, et cetera, but students, on campus parties, they're kicking the students out. But, if they're at a function off campus, or, and our students are working in bars or restaurants where there's a lot of face-to-face interaction, and students said they're wearing masks, but there's no distancing. There's nothing else has changed. I'm very concerned about the students bringing something in. And of course, Sapporo's had various clusters. Some of them have been related to bars or, karaoke places, but, and I'm anticipating the Hokkaido incidence of COVID to increase because people have come back home for Obon, and in the next 7 days, I imagine we're going to get a spike. You can count out 2 weeks from Obon. So, and then what happens? How's that going to impact what the colleges decide to do? No one knows, but I'm predicting an increase up here. And what do we do? I don't know.
It's very difficult to anticipate.
Yes.
Obviously, staying online and keeping everybody at home obviously would be the surest way to make sure that there was nothing happened. But it's obvious that's obviously not going to be the case. I think, reiterating what was said earlier, take those MEX guidelines to student affairs and ask for there to be a clear policy, and ask for the authority to kick people out of the classroom if they don't comply with those guidelines of masks at a minimum.
What if you end up with Linda's administrator, who himself will not wear his mask properly?
Yeah. Have the courage to stand up to him and ask him to
curse and
set an
swear.
example. What was that, Dave?
Curse and swear. That's how.
Take his picture and go up to the next level of admin.
Put your.
Oh, careful! You're being recorded, dude. You're being recorded.
I know some people have mentioned unions in the chat, but there's another approach too, and that's departments. So your department, if they come together in solidarity, does have more power. And so I've noticed that a lot of English departments have kind of carved out an exception to themselves when it comes to face-to-face at certain institutions. And that's because they have some legitimate complaints. This is not a lecture subject. We're not talking and talking for 100 minutes, right? We need to have conversations. We have accomplished that. The students seem very happy with their lessons. Let us continue. And I think if you can come together with your department heads, I know some of you are department heads yourself, and your part-time teachers, you can kind of form your own block, and that's pretty powerful. And I think if you make a reasonable request, the easiest thing for them to do might be just to listen to you.
Yeah.
We are currently taking our university to the Tokyo Labor Commission. We're in.
They're certainly going to be listening to you, aren't they? About other requests.
They're not. They're. Yeah, we're not. We're not afraid to speak up at our at our institution. I guess. Yeah, we unionized about a year ago, and it's the greatest thing. I don't know if we're going to get anywhere with it, but this in solidarity, when you get together with your other fellow union members, gives you confidence. To doing it alone is very tough. You know?
If you met that 70% threshold in Japan, that allows the union to represent the university legally.
I don't know. I'm not sure what that means, but I know that the university itself, we didn't know that most of the Japanese teachers are a part of Hijokin, which somebody wrote up here, Hijokin. So they're already part of the part-time teachers union. But a bunch of us foreigners went with Tozen, which is a English speaking based union out of Tokyo. So, but we have the numbers, and we declared. We fought. I don't know what percentage we needed, but we declared, and that's all.
If you're over 70, by law, your union represents all teachers. So there's kind of a threshold there too.
Yeah, we're dealing with two unions at the same campus or at the same university.
And are those two unions in solidarity with each other?
They're not in lockstep, but we do communicate. I mean, right. The battle is basically the same battle, but they've been offending each other a little bit here and there.
Yeah, right.
I'm actually in both of them. I don't mind spending the extra dough to make sure that I'm fully represented, but
right.
But I only participate actively in the Tozen union.
Right. Jose?
I was thinking that one of the things that I don't know about you guys, but I had to deal with was the fact that at least one of my universities, and the other one too, was kind of guilty of the same problem, was that they decided their policy for how they were going to go into end of May and June at the end of May and the start of June. And they didn't tell us until maybe about 10 days before it was going. And we had inklings, we had rumors, but there was no specific policy until it happened. And we were playing with possibilities in our heads about, well, it could be this, it could be that. What do we do with this? What do we do if it's that? I think we have to be prepared not only for that to happen again, but in terms of how they will tell us, not just how we're supposed to create our curriculums, but we have to be prepared all the way up to the very beginning of the October semester for them to be hemming and hawing and to be equivocating about what it is that they're going to do all the way up to the beginning of the semester, and for us to be prepared in every situation. Because if they say, no, you know what, just masks is fine because, you know, the numbers have gone down in this prefecture, something crazy like that, all the way to something very, very cooperative on their part. And that's what I think drove me crazy at the beginning of May, was that, will you please give us a decision? And they were waiting and waiting and waiting, and it drove me crazy, and they're probably going to do it again. So I think if we're all prepared, that'll help us.
That came up this morning, Jose, with Simon and I about decisiveness, and it came up with the JMOOC conference we were on when they asked me what I thought was the most important issue for universities, and to me it was decisiveness. Being decisive is that frustrates me listening to you speak, Jose, because
my university was exactly the same way, Jose, and one of my colleagues who's on one of the education committees is also on Twitter, and he's noticed that the schools tends to be sending out a lot of Twitter messages about what's happening in fall without telling any of the teachers.
Right.
Kind of like Trump.
Yep.
Like a Trump policy.
Yeah, a little more open about it, but not open enough to us. Yeah.
Okay.
So I hear you.
Does every tweet end with big capital letters SAD? No.
Bigly letters.
Bigly. Okay.
Simon made a good point before. I think he was half joking about are the dues in yet? I think that is a huge factor. They want the students to, register for these classes and get invested before they make their announcement.
Yeah, I think probably. Sorry, Scott, go on.
No, I was going to say. So I'm the same issue. I'm at a public university, and I'm still waiting to hear back. what is going to happen. There's a lot of back and forth, and so many surveys, so many student surveys and teacher surveys. They know how people feel. They're just dragging it out.
I think it's, consensus forming is very, very important, but also very, very difficult, and whichever committee is sitting, the emphasis is always on a consensus in that committee. I think that's why these things can go right until the last minute, as frustrating as it is. I think prepare for the worst case.
Yeah.
Hope for the second worst. It's probably what you're
going to get both.
Jeez. Yeah.
You can be thankful for is we've survived the first term, and we know now the technology. We know how to do online stuff. If we weren't before, we've learned flexibility, so we are in a much better position to face the next term, right? I mean, even to whatever the schools decide, I don't think can compare to the shock that we were going through back in March and April. I think we're.
I wonder what would happen if someone's school said you're going face to face, yet on the first day of class you get there ahead of time and put on the board, no face to face. Meet me at Zoom or Moodle or whatever, starting today, and then you're not even in the room after that.
You might,
because we know how it works.
Yeah, well,
I think, Glenn, depending on how the university sells the whole face-to-face thing to the students who want to go face-to-face, if you do that, the backlash, I think, might at least partly come from the students who wanted to be face-to-face with you.
I hear that.
I think we have to remember sometimes too that when the university sells to the students, hey, isn't this going to be great? You can be able to go to your circles. You can be able to talk to your friends again. If that's the way they're marketing it to the students, it won't be a good idea for us to sort of become the bad guys by taking that away from them to that degree.
Well, are they taking away from my potential health problems? Because I would put that on the board with it.
I'm with you. I'm with you. I'm just saying that the kids themselves
Yeah.
are going to have to be convinced of that before we do something that might make them feel like we're pulling the rug out from under them for what it is we wanted to come back to.
I'm curious. Even if Glenn did what he did, there's still not taking anything away from the students, because the students will be face to face with each other in the classroom.
That's a very
and then
good
you'll
point.
be just like that Apple commercial from 1984, Big Brother face in the, and maybe one kid's going to throw the hammer at you if anyone remembers that commercial.
I think you're answering your own question, Bill, but okay.
But I mean, just, as long as the school Wi-Fi would support.
Not an option for me. Like at the one university I'm worried most about, it's the most ridiculous one. No Wi-Fi in the rooms, and all of these situations that when everyone suggests, well, what about this? What about this? And I go, no, because that's what the university has set up as hurdles for us. And these decisions are being made by people who are not teachers, who don't understand ICT, and who are thinking only about making sure butts stay in seats. Really, I'm sorry I'm venting, but like, when you say,
I wonder what the student survey results have been, because I'm sure virtually every university has sent out some kind of survey, and it's probably an awful one, but just wondering, because with Jose saying some students will want to be face-to-face with their teacher, I'm curious if anybody's ever going to be able to show that more than not would rather go online for the safety. I don't know.
I can speak to that, Glenn. I think I think one thing we underestimate is how terrible some of the other teachers are doing with online lessons.
I'm sorry, how what?
Terribly. I mean, I don't know if you've heard some of your students complain about the other quality of online teaching from some of the regular teachers, but they don't know how to use Zoom breakout rooms. It's just somebody talking. It's a poorly annotated PowerPoint. They're bored to the point of they don't care about their health concerns anymore.
Yeah.
So I think,
but they want to get back to school so they can hang out with their friends, because those teachers' lessons are exactly the same in the lecture room. Right?
Exactly. So it's like the worst situation. They've got both a boring lecture and no friends. So they figure, well, if I have to put up with a boring lecture because the guys are going to play the same effing PowerPoint anyway, may as well sit around and be with my friends. Yeah. So they think, okay, fine, you know.
Well, my own surveys are showing that the students are the same as usual. 98% enjoy what I've done. So I know the students have hated all of our science teachers' lectures. I'm not a science teacher.
So that goes back to maybe carving out exceptions for departments, right?
I know that
I
Jenny.
also feel like a lot of the students don't necessarily feel that danger anymore.
Yeah.
It's been going on for so long, they're just like, yeah.
The fatigue is set in.
Yeah.
Yeah, complacency, certainly, I think. And the numbers are going down again nationally.
So if you teach university students, that is the demographic that is the most dangerous and, most likely to spread the 20 to 30 group, right? Or the 18.
According to recent information from the UK, 1 in 8 of cases were caught in hospital. So I don't know if that puts hospital patients more at risk than people that are dealing with 20 or 30-year-olds. But certainly, socializing students are the ones that are going to be getting involved in the 3 C's in their nighttime activities. Dave.
Simon, you referred this morning to the fallibility, I guess I would say, of surveys.
Yeah.
Could you?
Yeah, just a lot of data that you read on surveys says that they're really not very accurate. The first thing is that people are very, very bad at assessing themselves, that they essentially don't give their true answers. They give what they think the survey questioner wants to hear or what other people will say. Obviously, anonymous surveys are better, but there's a great paper, and I can dig it out, as to anonymous survey data that people knew was false when it was given back. It was about lying, basically, or cheating. No, it was about cheating in tests, and those that they knew that had cheated, and the way that they answered the surveys just basically meant that the survey was of little value. So the idea being that a survey to gather general opinion, should be widely sampled, anonymous, and over 1,000 people. And yeah, as people are saying, Hawthorne effect, and polling is notoriously inaccurate for in exit polls and pre.
It's hard for me to tell with my students, because I didn't even ask, because I agree with you. It's hard for anyone to tell a person right in front of them, hey, how did you like my class? And of course they say, oh yeah, it was great. But they do sometimes open up about their other classes, and they're quite unanimous in saying, at least at this engineering university, that whoa, yeah, thank you very much. I'm here all week, folks. That they did not enjoy their other classes. I didn't even ask them about mine, but the common thing was a lot of these students, like Scott was saying, had to take classes that were on demand, badly annotated PowerPoints, or the teacher was trying his best, but this was a lab-based class, and they just couldn't get in there and do their lab work. And no matter how good the teacher was, they've got to get hands-on work with materials and drilling into them and doing testing and stuff. They did not like this semester.
I gave my students a questionnaire, and when I was preparing it, I showed it to another teacher, and she didn't want me asking questions about other faculty members. So the question about how did you like your, other classes was thrown out.
Wow.
But I did ask, how was your experience in general? And I was pleased that students commented that they really liked other teachers' things too. They liked my stuff. The results were more positive than negative, quite a bit more positive than negative. But of course, there were some things that were negative.
Was this anonymous, Linda?
It was anonymous. And they were allowed to give their name if they wanted to. But only 4 students out of all my students gave their name.
Yeah.
But it was the questions, your experience in general, and your life off campus or on campus in general. It was more positive than negative. I was pleased that the students generally had a basically good experience.
Right.
My opinion about good or bad experience is this is life.
Yes.
Right.
This is what it is this year or next year, and as a human being, you're going to go through some things you like or don't like in your life.
Exactly.
And you're going to look back on it, and your job is to learn from all of it, right? As a kid, and I'm not saying my classes were terrible or anything, but the point. They may have been, but I was never too concerned all semester about my kids' social emotional stuff. I mean, of course we did all kinds of communicative activities and all that, but this burden that we're all faced is part of your life. It's part of what's going to make you an adult. So just get on with it, you know.
Yeah.
That's easy to say when you're at a bigger school.
Why do you say that?
Well, our school has such a small student body that students who don't fit in or don't make friends quit, and we can't afford to lose them.
Right. That's the way it was at my junior college too, because there were only about, in total at the school, about 800 kids. One of the things that they sold to these kids to get them come to this junior college, and you can be far more, I use the word intimate, but you can be closer to your teacher, and they will take really good care of you. And we were told by the administration, look after these kids as if you're their uncle.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the semester, we all heard that phone companies were offering more bandwidth, and at my school, we were complaining that the administration wasn't doing anything for improving Wi-Fi in the dorm, for trying to help students with their nearby apartments and their Wi-Fi, that sort of thing. I wonder if they've learned their lesson, and if the students have maybe gained a little more positive experience to be better prepared technologically, because that is one of their griefs that they had. Not talking about the safety issue necessarily, but it's related, because if they want to stay in their rooms and avoid going to an empty classroom or a classroom with people, that's safety related. I just wonder how much better they feel that they survived a technology semester and can do it better in fall. I don't know.
Yeah. Bill?
Yeah, to that, I'm of two minds. I think, they students and their families have had time to prepare and get better prepared for classes, but still, there's inequity between students and families, and some students haven't been able to work at part-time jobs. The opportunities have been fewer. Their families might be going through a more financial crisis. So there might still be students who are really underprepared for online classes. And I think we just have to, be prepared to do something for that lowest denominator.
For those kids that are in their own apartments, living away from their families and not in dormitories, if I'm not mistaken, they're kind of stuck with a 2-year plan for whatever Wi-Fi their apartment hooked up to also. So we got to think about that. If it wasn't good.
On the other hand, I was thinking about what Cynthia mentioned before about how, well, at least all of us are now, we can take our experience into the next semester as educators. And I think, at the very least, you have kids now coming into this semester at the same university who were taught how to use Moodle, who finally started touching a keyboard. when they're told this is a URL, they probably know what a URL is better than back in May or in June. So we can assume a little bit more of these kids, just like we can assume a little bit more about ourselves, even at the lowest common denominator. Not that that's really reassuring, but it's not going to be the real slap in the face that it was back in May and June for most of us, I think. Cynthia, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, I think we are right now building and reacting to what's happening right now, but COVID is going to be with us for quite a while. Who knows how long? Also, companies, schools have been forced to change, and online communication and, you know, this distance, well, there's always been distance learning programs, but what I can see with the horrible economic impact on families is that sending a child to a school and being able to afford that is going to be increasingly out of reach of families. And I can see the Hokkaido situation, which is always economically bad, but even worse now. And I actually mentioned this to the college president. I can see, and I think we need to start thinking about a distance learning program where the students are in their homes, wherever, you know, on the other side of Hokkaido, you know, where the ice floes are, or where the cranes are flying, and study at home, save all that money for, you know, living costs and moving costs. They've got a social network because they have their friends, their local friends and families. Probably they would be more comfortable working part-time near their families, etc. But I can see the future is more distance, or, you know, enkaku jugyo, this, you know, online stuff. And I think also for adults who are needing to educate themselves, needing a change so they can make themselves marketable, are going to have to do something to get themselves back into jobs. And I think maybe something like our 2-year school, which basically trains people to go into the workplace, you know, in half the time as a 4-year school. This is something that
you should have a look at the Google certificates that they've just announced. They reckon they're going to issue certificates you can get in 6 months that will be equivalent to a 4-year degree.
Ooh.
In their reckoning, anyway. Obviously, you'll be qualified to go and work for Google. And yeah, I think this is the start of that. And I think a lot of universities are going to go bust, which they will be anyway because of demographics and oversupply.
Right. I mean, it's on its way down anyway. And the product that we are offering has less takers just because they're, you know, so to create a new market, or to also to, you face the reality of the depressed economy. People want to study, are going to need to study, they need the qualifications, but the cost.
Well, I don't think people do need the qualifications. I'm not sure many of them do want to study, and I'm not convinced how many of them actually need to. And so come along to my session at 2:00 tomorrow afternoon and we can destroy education. David.
To Cynthia, and then something a little different. You talked about the idea that we really don't know how long COVID's going to last. Well, I just did an application for a university job here in Tokyo just for a couple hours, and it's, you know, it's online for the fall semester, and the same COMA will be available for next spring. And I said, so that will likely be face to face. He said, well, we don't know that yet, which struck me when that was like.
I think.
Well, I never thought about that, but yeah, maybe we may not be online. We may not be face to face.
I think when we're talking about time frames, sorry, David, I think we're talking about time frames. We sometimes, in our own optimism, get confused about the numbers that get thrown around. And we're talking about April as potentially coming back. I think that's just a clear number to our heads that, you know, yeah, it's been a year. But actually, that's probably the soonest a vaccine will become production available. But production available does not mean dispersed. And then you need a certain dispersal rate so that then you can get it up to the point of maybe approaching herd immunity through this vaccine. But that doesn't mean that the virus still isn't running around to some degree. We have to wait. We're talking about safe to return to classrooms. We have to wait until that vaccine is not only ready, but it's dispersed and people have actually gotten it into their arms. And that could take an extra year from production start.
I don't know what the in-office working rates in Tokyo are at the moment. In the official lockdown, obviously it was around about, it was under 30%. I think of people were actually going into work. I know it's gone up, but it hasn't gone back to 100%. But outside of the 3C areas, you're not really seeing an explosion in infection rates in Tokyo, and the death rate certainly isn't going up. So whilst the testing rate is going up, so I don't know how to read those statistics. But it might not be as bad as everybody fears, you know. This is not a call for complacency, but it might not be as bad as everybody fears. For our part, again, smaller groups, but taking the precautions that we are, I feel pretty confident that people are coming to us prepared to take cautions, and the precautions that we're taking in the classrooms. I mean, they're as good as we can do, and I'm pretty confident that unless somebody comes in infected and coughs directly in your face, I think we should be okay.
Simon, Scott, there was an interesting point in the chat from Yuki. I don't know if Yuki actually wants to bring it into the discussion, but I thought it was really interesting. I don't know if you do. Maybe not.
To Simon's point, and the point I wanted to, the additional point I wanted to make was what I picked up from Joe Rogan, which is very opposite of everything that we've been saying tonight, which is, what about me taking care of my body and my immune system so that if I do get that sneeze in the face, that cough in the face, I can fight, I can be the one who, you know, isn't affected so much by it, because there are steps we can take to improve the strength of our, you know, there are age factors and all that, and there's health factors, but we need to know our own risks, and we need to know what we can do to keep ourselves strong and healthy too, which is good sleep, good food, and good, you know, whatever, vitamins, whatever those things.
This is a really shitty semester to be asking us, are you getting enough sleep?
Yeah,
are you eating good food? Are you avoiding stress? Wrong on all three for me.
Yeah, but you're doing things, aren't you? You're writing, you're doing something to keep yourself.
Not as much as I would like to actually feel good about the fact that, yeah, I think I'm ready to like get somebody to sneeze in my face.
Well, especially those of us that are in the position now where we have to simultaneously prepare for face-to-face and online, right? It's almost double the workload. Like we're kind of in this
workload is
no man's land.
First semester was unbelievable.
Yeah, and the pay was the same, wasn't it?
Yeah. Please don't remind me of that, man.
Pay was the same, but my expenses went up because I.
But your reward will be in heaven.
I'm certain of it. In fact,
I got some bad news for
It'll
you.
be sooner than you want.
That's right. Yeah, wait till that guy sneezes on your face.
Yeah, you know, and again, speaking to a lot of Japanese junior high and high school teachers, admittedly mainly at private schools, but who are dealing with probably, I don't know, 6 classes a day, maybe more, you know, the workload. Absolutely
in the same
enormous.
room.
Absolutely enormous. I mean, this was during lockdown, really, when the schools were closed, but yeah. But we're going to destroy education tomorrow anyway, so it's only a couple of years until this is all answered.
Okay.
I don't know how everybody else feels, but I'm starving.
Yes.
Me too.
I'm starting to melt.
I mean, Glenn nipped out for his dinner halfway through.
Yeah, way to go, Glenn. You cheated.
Which means I'm really tired.
I feel sorry because I had dinner in front of you, so sorry about that.
Man. Don't feel bad, man. That was a great
I knew how to take care of myself.
I will save the chat and give it to somebody who will spread it widely.
And gentlemen, if you could give us the recording. Oh, that's right. Neither you. Well, David. No.
I'm recording it. I'll send you the link. Jose, you better download it from there.
Download it from, you're going to send it up to Zoom?
It's recording to the cloud as we speak.
Thank you very much. Excellent. Excellent.
So the chat probably will be automatically as well. I'll check, but I'll save it anyway.
And Bill and Dave, your recordings too, when you can. People are already bugging us for like, oh, when can we see the videos? And so, well, wait, we haven't finished the session yet. But people are really, really hearing that these are great sessions and they want to see the videos as soon as they can. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
It was great.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Scott, would you like to officially wrap up as the as mine host?
Yeah, it sounds good. I think it's almost worth coming together another 4 weeks from now when we actually know what our context will be, to help plan, reevaluate. Because unfortunately, right now things are kind of still up in the air. But sorry, Luis, did you have something to say?
No.
Clapping your hands.
Oh, it's a clapping. I always think it's the hands up. I'm sorry. All right, well, go ahead, Jose.
Sorry, Scott. One thing that I think that's coming out of these sessions is that people are less hesitant to do what I did by stepping forward and doing the Saturday sessions by themselves. People are starting to see that they can do this by themselves, and then I think that your suggestion, Scott, of coming back together in 4 months, I think is, I hope that spreads out to the general community and they see Saturday as a time for like, hey, let's do this, let's do that. And they start throwing out topics to be addressed like on a schedule and revive those Saturday sessions, not necessarily just from my push, but from everybody else's push. And I think you've got a great idea there, Scott.
Yep. Set up your own Zoom session, and anytime there's a topic, if you're in doubt, just send me a message or Jose, whatever. And
if you can, sorry, this is promotion for my session tomorrow, but if you can, please do come along.
What time is it, Simon? Tomorrow?
2 o'clock tomorrow.
And to that end, if anybody's interested in learning how to use OBS, free video editing software to create professional level videos for your classes, Friday at 5 p.m. All the software is free, so it's very accessible.
It has been an amazing first 2 days. And believe it or not, it only gets better because Thursday and Friday is when the heavy hitters show up. That's when
tomorrow 2 o'clock, mate.
Okay, sure.
Come on, Jose.
So, I'm sorry.
Tomorrow afternoon, I have meetings.
What can I say?
Well,
people
record it.
Telling me, well, what about this time slot and what about that time slot? Is what can I say? So, but in any case, Thursday and Friday, keep your eye out for these are plenary speaker level heavy hitters in EFL. And we're talking Mark Helgeson, Curtis Kelly, Amanda Gillis-Furataka, all in the same session. Charlie Brown is going to be showing you how to do his word lists. It's just going to be amazing going forward. It's been great. It's going to get even better from 2 in the afternoon tomorrow.
Cool bananas. Okay.
Anybody who's teaching TOEFL or test taking Thursday morning at 10 o'clock with Nick Nananzi.
There you go.
Well, it's been real. I gotta go.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Nighty night.
Thank you.
Take care.
Good night.
Toodaloo.